Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our keynote speaker event in just a moment. Before we begin with that, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements. Just a reminder that Borders of Diversity is sponsored by the Cross-Cultural Center, the English Division, Puente, and the Student Services Fund. So again, we'd like to thank them. That $10 activity fee that you pay as a student actually goes towards events like these. So we can bring wonderful speakers like Rika today. So I would also like to thank you, the students, for contributing to today's event. My second announcement is to please remember to complete our SurveyMonkey survey after the keynote event today. The responses on the survey allow us to better tailor our events to you and also help us to obtain funding for more events like these. Okay. And then my last announcement is that after Rika's speech today, she will have some books available for sale, and she does take a credit card as well. So if you're interested in purchasing a book after the question and answer session, you may do so over there. Okay?
More than maybe so. I'd really be happy if you did. Thank you.
Yes, she'd be really happy if you did. So let's support our wonderful authors and writers. So again, thank you for coming to Borders of Diversity 2019. If you were here this morning for our first two wonderful panels, we did kind of a little background of the event. This is the 20th anniversary of this event at PCC. So yay. And we're really excited to continue the tradition that began 20 years ago as a conference for students, especially in the humanities, who otherwise did not have an opportunity to share their academic work. So we'll continue that again today. Today, we are really excited to have our keynote speaker, Rika Aoki, and our Dean of English, Dr. Isela Osegueda, will be introducing her today. So without further ado, Dr. Osegueda.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the 2019 Borders of Diversity Conference entitled Borderland Identities, Empowering Others, Affirming Ourselves. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Rika Aoki. Before I do that, however, I would like to take a moment to offer thanks to those who have played a key role in making today's conference a reality and a success. So I want to start by thanking English professors Simona Supakar and Juliana Sampson for taking the lead in planning, organizing, and implementing this year's Border of Diversity conference. As is the case with most conferences, we simply get to show up and enjoy the day. But everything that you see and experience today actually took a lot of work to put together. So we could have a seamless and engaging experience. So thank you, Professor Supakar and Sampson, for all your hard work and a job well done. Thank you to the entire Borders of Diversity Committee, especially Dr. Mikage Kuroki, who chaired the event on her own for the previous 9 years. So thank you to the entire committee. I actually want to take a moment to acknowledge some of the other English faculty in the room. Please wave your hand, and I apologize if I've overlooked you, but I think I've got everyone in the room. Professor Trish Herrera, is she still here? I just saw her a little while ago. Okay. Professor Kirsten Ogden, there she is. Professor Keith Williams, is he still in the room? Yeah, okay. Professor Vanitha Swaminathan. Yay. Professor Michelle Banks. There she is. Professor Brian Adler. Back there. Professor Brian Gonzalez. Professor Elsie Rivas Gomez. Saw her here. Professor Mantu. She's here. There she is. And Professor Dan Staler. So I want to thank each of them for their involvement and engagement. I know Professor Staler ran a great panel this morning, so I've heard. So thanks to all of you. Special thanks also goes to Carrie Alfuso in the Office of Student Life for helping to make the event happen every year. I also want to recognize Anna Davis and Monique Hedrick Walters in the English division who've assisted with the logistics of the conference. Yeah. And lastly, I want to give a special thanks to all of our PCC students who make this event possible. Raise your hand if you are a PCC student. Hi, raise them high. So thank you for taking advantage of another great PCC opportunity to engage, to learn, and to grow. This conference has students at the center, and we are so happy to have you with us here today. I would now like to introduce our wonderful keynote speaker, Rika Aoki. Rika Aoki is the author of Seasonal Velocities, Hemele Ahilo, a Hilo Song, and Why Dust Shall Never Settle Upon This Soul. She's been honored by the California State Senate for her extraordinary commitment to free speech and artistic expression, as well as the visibility and well-being of transgender people. Yes. Rika was the inaugural performer for the first ever transgender stage at San Francisco Pride and has performed in venues including the San Francisco Pride Main Stage, the Columbus National Gay and Lesbian Theater Festival, the National Queer Arts Festival, and Lady Fest South. Rika also appears in the recent documentaries Diagnosing Difference and Riot Acts. She has an MFA in creative writing from Cornell University and is the recipient of a university award from the Academy of American Poets. She is a professor of English at Santa Monica College. In addition to her creative and academic pursuits, Rika is also a former national judo champion and the founder of the International Transgender Martial Arts Alliance. She teaches an inclusive system of self-defense and martial arts to at-risk youth at the LA LGBT Center and has presented self-defense seminars at conferences and special events throughout Southern California. For her work with youth, Rika was named an outstanding volunteer by the LGBT Center's Children, Youth, and Family Services, and for her, this is her favorite award ever, and I really appreciate that about you. Rika, we're so happy to have you with us here today. Thank you for sharing your work and your energy with us as we celebrate our 20th Border of Diversity Conference. Please join me in welcoming Rika Aoki.
So today I'm going to do something I don't think I've done before when I've given a keynote. I'm going to start with reading. And then I'm going to read a couple things. Then I'm going to say what I was going to say. And then if there's still more gas in the tank, I'll read a couple pieces. If there's no gas in the tank, I'll read one. I was really touched this morning. I want to thank everybody who brought me here. I'm having a brain fart right now, but people just are working so hard to make this conference happen, and I really appreciate it. Everyone is working double, triple, quadruple time, and rather than give you more stuff to think about at this moment, I want to start with a reading because it's what I make and it's what I do. So before I keynote, I'd like to contribute with a present from me. Lilacs and lilies on a cold Wednesday night. This is actually a little bit, kind of a true, it's an amalgamation of a bunch of true stories. you're too young for this, but some of the old queer bars in the area, like Encounter and things like that, that's where I came out, and this is about one of those things later. If you want to hear about like the old school Pasadena queer scene, I'll tell you about it later, okay? Okay, good. The father from the Brady Bunch used to show up. It was like the weirdest thing, but anyway. Lilacs and lilies in a cold Wednesday night. From the moment you entered, you haven't stopped telling. Your barbershop hair, the smudges on your glasses, the hamburger stain on the cheap short-sleeved dress shirt you bought in 3-pack from JCPenney. Your gut jammed in the coffee brown wash and wear slacks that were never meant to be seen outside of an office cubicle. The soda water in your hand, the goose pimples and hair on your forearm afraid to lift itself off the bar. Oh, your brushback hair, blow-dried salt and pepper, your nails brushed and manicured, buffed and manicured, your I still listen to the Eagles and think they're cool, dressy, casual blazer and blue jeans that have faded without doing any real work. The Glenfiddich, neat, that will make the little veins in your nose so compelling when you tell me about your trip to Patagonia and your love of Brazilian music. Brazilian, all of it. Your shaggy head, your bald head, your perfect teeth, yellow teeth, missing teeth, t-shirt, polo shirt, button down, your dark beer, light beer, your cocktail, your soda, your dress shoes or tennis shoes or work shoes or cowboy boots, your wedding band. Your mouth half opened, half closed like a frog in May when the lilacs and lilies bloom. Your bluegill eyes tracking me as if sighting a damselfly, a ball of cheese, a worm. From the moment you entered, you haven't stopped telling your story. It's a story you still don't know. When you meet me, what will you do? Well, you'll come up to me, and whatever your pickup line, it won't matter unless it's really good. More likely, I'll talk to you because your story seems interesting, at least for the moment, and no matter what you say, I'll smile or giggle, and you'll think it was all because of you. And I will say just the right thing, ask just the right question. And just when you want to say something, I'll notice, stop myself, and apologize for being such a blabbermouth, and you'll shake your head and say, you can never say too much, babe. Whom will you mention? Dylan Thomas, Jimi Hendrix, Quincy Jones. Whomever it is, you'll notice my interest and say how amazed you are to find that someone you met here would be so aware of life outside this bar. Whatever we're talking about, I will ask you more, see how much you know, and go no further. You'll mispronounce the Caribbean, or say the anti-popes were in Florence rather than Avignon, and I won't even blink. Instead, I'll nod and gasp as if you show me a new world. If you're smart, you would sense I know a lot more than I'm letting on. You're not that smart. Or you are. Or normally would be, or used to be before you got a real job, or had your family, or listened to your parents, or hurt your back, and now you are so hungry for someone to just listen to you, to nod and look in your eyes and say, wow. Soon you will brush some hair away from my eyes. You'll let your fingers brush my cheek. You'll touch my shoulder. You'll touch my knee. And you'll be a worm wriggling on my hook. If you haven't yet, by now you'll start talking about Asians and mutter some Japanese or Mandarin if you're able. And now whomever I really am is invisible to what you see in me. You'll touch my elbow, move your hand down my back or up my leg. You'll stop again and think you are saying how you want to fuck me, to possess me, to teach me, to free me, to open me, whatever is making you feel more alive. But everyone has a story. And from the moment I saw you, you haven't stopped telling. If I want to fuck, I will. But the more you've spoken, the more I've seen. And if I let you, it's because I already knew. Because that's what I wanted. And if I don't, it's all the other times that I've seen your story. As you hold another drink or stammer another name, as other words end just before the desperation does. As I see how that desperation peeks around your edges, and everything I need to know and everything I knew is there. And that's why we are kindred souls to a darkness and distance so great that even now, even this night, even this sex would never, ever have been enough. This one here, I'm reading this little piece for, actually a little bit of a series for Mikage's class. Anybody here from Mikage's class? Yeah, there was this, people are talking about me writing about KFC chicken, so I'm going to read this next piece. Why Dust Shall Never Settle Upon This Soul happened, just to set in context, after I lost 2 friends to suicide, like months with each other. When you're transgender, you know a lot of dead people. It kind of goes with the course. A lot of your friends are going to die. But this one really hit me because 1, they were so young, and 2, we were so close, and 3, the dates were so close. And the other problem too was I both learned about their deaths through Facebook because that's where they were posting. We tour a lot as artists, so we meet each other on just wherever these. One was living in New York and one was living in Michigan, and it was like pop, pop, they're gone. So what do you do after that? You just kind of, you don't do anything constructive. You read poems and hope it's good enough. So this piece is called Why Dust Shall Never Settle Upon the Soul. It's actually the main piece. And it's really just about, well, whatever, I'll just let the words speak for themselves. What can one do when brilliant friends who remain brilliant leave? The Egyptian astrologer incanting psalms of forgotten souls, gone. The space-time composer with pocket universe of beat-matched LEDs, away. The Enlightenment weaver threading certain fallen and unfallen yarns, never to look back. What can one do when those who taste prophecy in a teaspoon feel symphonies in a Van Nuys cul-de-sac, hear colors amongst the coldest February gray, at my new pronoun find nothing worth another thought? Grab the mic, cue the karaoke, because what else could this be but a song? By now, I was supposed to have mall walk to arthritic elderhood. I would have been Tia Rika, perched upon a padded chair, to speak lovingly of arena and fuck and fang, the downtown loft with the best cocaine, Peanuts, where Sinead O'Connor was hiding between an inside wall and her outside bodyguard. I'd be talking about cinematic and illusions and drag shows at the old Queen Mary, cutting the lines of Hardest House as the gorgeous ones dance or sip vodka tonics or give head in lime green restroom stalls. Of how the strobe lights knew how to stop at the makeup and glitter to leave us weary as the dead morning streets when the mockingbirds sang and the battered pickup trucks came to stack the LA Express kiosks with free tranny ads to remind us there was someplace yet to fall. I never expected to wake up to school boards banning Harper Lee, people calling evolution a fad, making America great again, Six Sisters refusing their meds. Never expected to see that, never expected to revisit the mucus, the wasting, the blindness, the heart-lung gurgles of struggling through one last hopeless night, the guilty final wish that you would just die. Who would have thought survival might rest upon how long one holds her melody, her sobriety, her breath? Slam faces, slam doors, a cold KFC bucket, some coleslaw someone pulled from a dumpster. TV goes, it gets better. I mean, what does that mean? Might Hello Kitty sing, a mother cry? Would a father even miss the Disneyland daughter he hadn't seen since she was supposed to have been his boy? We must remember these transgenders who simply wanted to be themselves. She wanted more. She was cosmic headscarves, and her fingertips would tap dance, and her eyes were like origami. She was satin camisoles, bedsheet corsets. She was flowers and cards, a hospice lobby For those who were too courageous to walk inside, there was nothing simple about her, or her, or her, or her, or her, or her. Bless those who disown their sons, yet say they listen to the same punk rock as they always have. Bless those whose children fled on a nighttime Greyhound bus, yet still bake cookies with raisins instead of chocolate chips. May God help those proper Presbyterians who kicked out their trans daughters, whose NPR membership leads to nights discussing the oppressed people of the day and how it's maddening but not realistic to demand justice for another generation or three. Light a candle, loop a ribbon, for in a world without runaways and cast-offs and queers, who shall redeem the rope, the razors, and the cans of gasoline? After life comes death. After death comes the community memorial. After the community memorial comes the HIV questionnaire. And then some grad student discards all the personal comments to perform t-tests on the numbers that remain. A null hypothesis, a grant proposal. Suddenly the office has a new coffee maker. Yet 4 miles south, bulletproof windows, 2-for-1 pizza, cash to go, $1 Chinese food. And the scholars are going, I am sure that you're sure. So sure I can assure you for sure that surely you are not sure who you are. And the best way to ensure who you are, I am sure, is for you to be sure you are sure, that until I can be sure you are sure who you are, surely you can't be sure you are sure. So surely don't say that you are sure, because surely I'm sure that you can't be sure. Meanwhile, on the streets, it's time to get real and authentic and start channeling, we shall overcome. Invoke the right Frida. Quote the right Audre Lorde, to shake things up, to organize, to close one's eyes and righteously fantasize of a favorite genderqueerish hottie with a dancer's ass, chestnut thighs, dreads, and high cheekbones. Auto-tuned, food trucks, Dayglow fixies, anarchy, fair trade, Americanos one consumes to get real, get hard, get laid. Revolution? Shit. It's a blood sport, because dead queers are easier to pray to, because they don't talk back and kill your buzz. Another sodden morning, another rent check due. In another life, someone skins a plum, frowns, then spits what clings too dark and tightly to the seed. But I'm not cruelty-free. I do not offer a gluten-free option. I won't talk like a pirate. I won't pump up the volume. I won't get wasted. Definitely won't have sex with you at Burning Man. I won't dig your hip hop, save your planet, this badass rally. I ain't talking Chinese, supporting Greenpeace. And, not gonna stop eating sushi. I'm not gonna watch Glee, ride a fixie or donate to whatever your Indiegogo, Lego, your ego is. I start my Honda, drive to my favorite freezer section, soft shoe past the okra and peas, waltz by the Breyers caramel praline crunch. You miss Chick-fil-A. I am my own guilty pleasure. The security guard, the cashier, even the cart with one stuck wheel cannot stop the revel of this nighttime promenade. 20 years ago, the astrologer would not suspend his disbelief. 10 years ago, the composer could not harmonize transgender with friend. 5 years ago, the weaver unraveled a rainbow at my name. Someday my car won't pass the smog test. I just found out I might go blind. Each day I take 5 pills to make me a little more than something I can never be. Someone may mark me with bad weather and omens. Judgment may thread through foot-treadle stars. Yet I will still hear hummingbirds, sip my coffee, maybe sit on a nice chest. To pull a sweater from my closet, shove my cell phone in my purse, then march for groceries with a 5-minute stop at CVS. The composer may abandon his back seat. The astrologer may withhold his gaze. The weaver may sever the threads of youth, threads of self, even as she cuts another inconvenient thread, unable to grasp why dust shall never settle upon the soul. So this is Diversity Week, and we're doing this diversity conference, and I'm so honored to be your keynote speaker. Already I visited a class, seen some excellent speakers, saw some really cool posters, and then we still got half the conference to go. There's so many points to remember, so many behaviors to change, so many things to keep in mind. But as much as I care about what is being done today, as much as my own queer self will benefit from all the insight and the work and the dedication shown here, I also come to you as a teacher. And as a teacher, I care not just about your activism, nor even just about your knowledge. I care about your well-being, too. See, diversity is so often presented as something people need to be trained in. Things to do, more things to check. Diversity is often presented as something that requires more work, more awareness, more time, more energy. And I'm thinking, how does that actually help? How does that actually keep us living one's day to day? Because life is full of things to do, isn't it? I mean, I'm already overloaded. You overloaded? My family's overloaded. My friends are overloaded. My students are overloaded. I mean, just seeing you all here today, y'all look overloaded. You're overloaded. So it's obvious. And then also, I'm looking at all these posters and what I hear. You all know better. It's like I don't need to tell you what to do. You need time. Whatever it is, you need time and health and life to do it. Also, I'm a writer. And I think of everyone's life as a precious, inimitable, and valuable story. And sometimes I want to ask, if this diversity is a good thing and an important thing and a human thing, where are all the individual poems? Where are the stories? Where's your story? So I thought about this keynote, and I decided instead of urging you to more action and taking up more of those amazing muscle and brain cells, I thought I'd kick it down a notch and tell you a few things and point out a few things that you don't have to do. I thought I'd discuss ways to change the world for the better by not taking action. So let's start with something easy. You don't need to waste time fighting over what's the best burrito in Los Angeles. You don't need to rank everything. Seriously. Do these discussions ever end well? Someone raises their voice, someone raises theirs, someone gives us weird facts from somewhere, someone gets confrontational, someone shuts up, and all for what? A freaking burrito. I mean, yeah, we have contests like the Olympics that give gold medals, but people opt into these contests. They consent to be evaluated. There are vetted rules and judges and scoring systems. Life ain't that way. Why do we waste so much time, so much energy ranking shit, ranking things? The best food, the best music, the best writers, the best people of color, the best trans people, the best queers. Why would we do that? There's no reason. And half the time, it makes no sense. Like when some white writers from New York come to LA to find the best Chinese food. Like, what the hell? Seriously, what the hell? One of my white friends asked for like the best egg foo young in Los Angeles. And I'm going, what? Seriously? I mean, ranking things sets up so many weird power structures and arguments. And suddenly grandma from Harbin is feeling inadequate because some lifestyle writer from the village was expecting flippin' egg foo young. There are so many tastes and cultures and styles and points of view. And we're all different. And even if you like something most of all, can you really be sure it's the best? I think it's too much effort. Don't need to clutter your life. Toss it, KonMari it, bye. But luckily, we have another word that fits this perfectly. You can have your favorite. You can't really know what the best burrito is in LA. However, you do have every right to have a favorite. When someone asserts something is the best, I always feel as if they're trying to pull it on a show or trying to convince me of something. But when they say, try this, it's my favorite, I feel warm and grateful because they're sharing something personal and something genuine. You see, when people tell me their favorites, we can share, describe, explain, we can even argue. But since we're discussing personal favorites, we're expecting these differences of opinion, and afterwards we can go all the way enriched, learning maybe a little bit more about their world, and we might even have a new burrito place to check out. Always looking for the best or the first is fine for a competition like the Olympics, but in real life and in communities, it sets people against each other. We work as family, as community. These aren't freaking battle royales. You don't need to do that. In the same way, you don't need to, oh, hell with it. Can I get an amen? One more time. It's a completely non-denominational, secular amen. Can I get an amen? Amen. Thank you. Now let's make the amen even queerer. Can I get an amen? Amen. Thank you. In the same way, you don't need to work to fill your life with like-minded thinkers. No. Relax. It's good. Look, I'm trans. You probably noticed I'm trans. You probably noticed I'm Asian American. I got books. I guess I'm a writer. And sometimes it's good to hang out with other Asians or trans folks or writers or heck, all of the above. But I prefer when it's not really arranged, when we kind of bump into each other, I suppose, kind of like queer manatees. I mean, hang out in Little Tokyo long enough, you'll eventually run into another Japanese American, right? I mean, sure, I'll go to a writing conference once in a while, trans events sometimes, Asian American shindig, but I'll miss a whole bunch of them too. When I'm with communities that supposedly are made for me or match me, I can feel kind of claustrophobic. Anyone else like that? It's like, yeah. I mean, when I'm in my family or I'm with other people, one thing I notice is that the nitpicky things bother me a lot more. Because I kind of know how the family is, so if someone's giving me shade, I pick up on it way, way more when it's from another Asian. Because we're aware, it's like how mom always knows how to pick your sort of push your buttons. In the same way, when you hang out with people that are, come from the same or some of the same culture, it's tougher to navigate sometimes. Things bug you more. And especially if there's offense given, it pisses you off because they must have meant that shit and they should have known better, right? Now, at least when you're dealing with strangers, they could just be ignorant. But they're not ignorant. They're your family and they know, and you should be doing that, right? It's kind of like if I sit up here and if I say, okay, dudes, you're all going, she was supposed to be the trans speaker and she's saying dudes? Right? So, I don't know, but it's kind of, I find that when you're with your own, it can be stressful. So it's okay to skip these events from time to time. Trust me, whatever drama you left behind will be there when you come back. And besides, although you might feel safer to stay with people like yourself, in reality, who is actually like you? And perhaps more importantly, what are you doing to yourself to be more like them? I've noticed for me, the longer I stay in a group, the more my little differences will protrude, and sooner or later, I'm starting to feel all boxed in. Like, if you hang out with a group of people and you're all driving the same style of truck, eventually someone's going to worry if their truck is good enough, if it fits in, if it's big enough, if it's Ford enough, is it Chevy enough? And that common denominator keeps getting lower and lower because then it starts getting who's really part of our group, who's a poser, who's that outsider, who's that enemy, because, if we're all fighting them, we don't have to worry about us. And gosh, you're never going to be an outsider, are you? And then it's back to square one. Keeping track of all the drama is tiring and bullshit, and you don't need it. Let it go. This stuff is burning our best and brightest out, and how could it not burn people out? You do this, you lose your freshness, and you lose what's new. You drag yourself to this rally or that rally. You buy this book or you wear that button or that shirt or say this thing, not because you want to, but because you have to, because it's part of the group. Look, there are plenty of gays who don't like Champa juice. Not everyone who listens to country music is an American, and not all Americans listen to country music. Some goths even do CrossFit, which is weird, but who am I to judge? Anyway, if you think you might get into a troll war or a fist fight over 2 different sports teams or singers or movies or what Ford F-150 models and trims are for real Ford people and which are for posers, you're probably overthinking things. You don't need to waste your time. You don't need that. Stop. You can break the circuit and find some new people to hang with once in a while. And instead of marshaling your next micro-argument, you might be relaxing, maybe with someone new, interacting with someone who might know little about you and you know little about them. You might even find they need a breath of fresh air too. It's said that James Joyce needed to leave Dublin to write about Ireland. Not really sure about Joyce, but I do know for Himalaya Hilo, not being in Hawaii gave me the perspective I needed to channel a more vibrant and present Hilo song. Think about the first time you rode a pickup truck, the first time you went to a trans bar. Think of your first obon in Hawaii, with the taiko in the middle of the circle pounding to the scratchy record, the Japanese record over the PA, and the colorful flower-filled dancers with children and parents and grandparents circling around and around in the air, thick and fragrant with the smell of incense and roadside mangoes and fried noodles. Imagine taking someone in a pickup truck for the first time, pulling over somewhere pretty by the beach, and there's just enough breeze to keep away the mosquitoes, kicking back in the truck bed, looking at the moon, then hearing how magic your life and this night is through someone else's words. Now imagine being taken in turn. Sometimes when you leave your neighborhood, it doesn't erase your love for who and where you are. More likely, it will rekindle it. So when you can do this, why spend any of your free time monitoring other people's identities? Really, another thing, you don't need to do that. Stop, let it go. Like, who's really an LA native? Who's really Asian? Who's really a poet? Who's really trans? How many hours have you wasted on these discussions? I'm embarrassed because I know how many hours I've wasted. You know, and I don't even like people too much. I'm thinking about them as real social people. It's like, I can't believe how many, and to what end? I mean, who's really American? Shoot, we can argue until we hyperventilate, but then it's 3 a.m. and none of us have filed our taxes yet. You know, in some ways, when you're saying you're judging character, you feel really powerful and you seem like, I'm going to be the judge. But for me, it reminds me a lot of stage fright. I've been reading and touring alone and with others for quite a few years. And it's still fun. I really still enjoy the heck out of it. And as I bop around, people will from time to time ask me how I deal with stage fright. Fact is, most of the time, like here in front of people, I don't really get too much stage fright. Today, my biggest stress is where am I going to park? You know, it's like, but thank you. It's all taken care of. I'm really pleased. But I'm much more nervous about finding parking or catching a plane if I have to than I am when I'm finally in front of the microphone. And talking with other writers and seeing other things, I've noticed this weird correlation. People who seem most critical of others, the ones who are the most negative, they seem to be the ones with the most stage fright. It's like, and in the meantime, the folks who just love to speak and share and love when others do too, they just don't seem as bothered by much. It's like, because they're not thinking of ways to tear each other down, when it's their turn at the mic, the stage fright bug doesn't have anywhere to hold on to. I mean, it's not karma anything. It's more like since they've been completely supported themselves, there's nothing in their souls or experience to make them feel others won't do the same, which I guess is kind of like karma, right? Anyway, those are the people I try to be like. And as I keep reading and performing, I'm going to see more readers. Some of them are going to be more seasoned or more famous or more talented, And occasionally I'll give advice, occasionally I'll get advice, sometimes I'll even get constructive criticism. But always positive, always encouraging. Because at the end of the day, everybody who I see up there is up there. They're doing it. Each of them is doing it as best that they can. Each has a perspective I'll never know. And I'll try to be grateful for every one of them, provided they don't go too far over their set length. And think about it, right? I mean, even if you do decide someone is valid, does that really actually matter? It's back to the burritos, right? I mean, I've had some readings where some well-intentioned audience member would look at me and say, I believe you. You really are a woman. And as if their approval was like the most generous gift. And I'm kind of going, okay, thank you. I mean, it's like, this would be great if you were like the TSA dude in the security line or, at LAX or a cop or even the salesperson at Forever 21. But you're just somebody, what? And I'm like, thank you, I guess. But how does this help transphobia or racism? I'm thinking, gosh, buy a book then. So really, stop. You don't need to go around telling people they're authentic. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do any of that. Instead, I want to hear you sing. I want to hear your words. I want to hear what you have to share. And I want to see you dance in your own way, not like someone else or in relation to someone else. I don't want you to step away from the music because you're trying to understand someone else. Get rid of all that and just freaking dance your music. Because the last thing I'm going to tell you to cut and throw away, the last thing are shoes. I want you to throw away shoes. As in other people's shoes. As in the shoes that other people to keep telling you to walk in. Like you have to walk in someone else's shoes. Toss that shit out. You don't need it. This is always such a misunderstanding. Walk in someone else's shoes as if some people don't wear shoes. Some people live in Hawaii. Some people have shoes, but they don't walk. Some people dance and walk with no feet. When you attempting to understand someone else is one of the biggest wastes of time and energy around. It's one of the biggest diversions from whatever you're doing is trying to understand someone else's culture, someone else's history, someone else's experiences. Heck, just attempting to understand someone else's existence. Yet I see people trying this all the time, trying to understand me. Trying to understand each other, even here in college, especially here in college where people are trying to understand their worlds more deeply. It seems logical, right, to think understanding will clear things up. It will help me offend and not make mistakes, but that's wrong. That's overthinking, that's overworking, because you know what? Another human being is not a classroom subject. It's another person. A culture cannot be fully encapsulated in a book. Sorry, I'm a writer, and if anyone should know the limitations of words, it's a writer. Besides, when we can't even understand ourselves, what on God's green earth makes us think we can understand another human as intricate and as complicated as we are? Notice how condescending that is? I have actually had non-Asian, non-queer, non-trans people trying to define me. This is how Asians really are. It's like, ick. Stay in your lane. You have no idea who I am. In fact, you just thought I was Chinese. Moments of understanding are beautiful when the time comes. And sometimes they come after a lot of hard work. But we're dynamic. And in matters of the soul, how does one even begin mapping that out? So we need another way, less stressful, less time-consuming, less annoying way to develop relationships. How about just trying to be friends? How about just trust? Just go with it. It's like those people who want to research all the histories and ethics and etiquette of a bowl of ramen before they actually take a bite. Look, sometimes I get you're going to need to dine with the incoming emperor of Japan, but usually, who cares? You don't have to worry about correct or authentic. The bowl's right there. Just taste the damn thing. You don't need to understand everything. I don't understand every process within the sun, but I know it's going to come up tomorrow. I don't need to understand people to like them or even to depend on them. Some of my best friends, I have no clue how they make it to work every day. You don't need to understand someone else to agree with them. You don't need to understand someone else to help them carry a bag of groceries up the stairs. You don't need to understand someone when they say they need help to help them. When they want a hug after work, you don't need to understand why. You just give the hug. You don't need to understand someone to make a friend. You don't need to understand someone to save their life. You don't even need to understand someone to fall in love. All you need is to be you. So speaking of love, I really love the title of this conference, Borders of Diversity. I'm a writer and a poet. Borders, diversity, these things play really well together. Diversity is good, but one needs to have borders too. Let's talk about diversity for a sec. Diversity is just here. You don't need to make or break diversity. None of us has the power or agency to do that. It's here. The world is diverse. You can believe or not believe in diversity, but, it really doesn't matter. You can believe the earth is flat or round. It really doesn't matter. Someone will always see you as different. You'll always see me as different. We're always going to run into somebody we both think is different. Diversity, diversity, diversity. Diversity is not some delicate, rare orchid that needs a soil at a certain pH and the perfect balance of nutrients and sun. Diversity can be encouraged, it can be hated, it can be suppressed, but it's here. Even if you're doing your best to ignore it, so just relax. And borders? People misunderstand borders all the time. Borders don't have to be closed off with walls. They can be rows of flowers or full of windows and doors you can open to let people in. We all have borders. Without borders, there'd be no diversity because we'd all be one giant glob of mush. Borders make us who we are. I seriously do not want to be you, and you wouldn't want to be me. Trust me, you really wouldn't want that. But here's the thing. As strong as diversity is, so are borders. Because when do you stop being you? When you learn a new language, eat new food, make friends with a gay classmate, make friends with a straight classmate. See, you might change your views on things, you might gain new experiences, but you don't change being you. Your borders are pretty resilient. They're your birthrights. In fact, borders are the first evidence of your birth anyway, right? You versus not you. So build strong borders, waste of effort. Better enjoy them, love and promote what they have chosen to embrace. Build diversity? Nah, not necessary. Better to focus and relish all the diversity that is already there. And when necessary, we can rescue people from abusive places and spaces and situations so they can love their borders and their diversity too. So, yeah, we're different, we're distinct. We change, we flow. Sometimes we go fishing, sometimes we make music, we make love, and suddenly a whole new story begins. And no, it's not always going to be smooth, but it need not be so heavy, so laden with work and effort. Fatigue. So this conference, I ask that you try not to do so much about ask you to not do so much about things you don't have to. Try not to worry about things that are taking care of themselves. Because, yeah, it's rough out there. There's so much to do. There's healthcare to find, shelters to build, coalitions to form. There's homophobia and racism and transphobia and anti-Semitism and sexism and always more to do. But remember, there is also always you. And that is something you never have to waste a single brain cell or single muscle trying to prove. So take that you and do some good in the world, but also remember your poetry and your story. Have a little fun. And who knows, you might even get to share a favorite burrito. Thank you. I wouldn't be that much of a teacher if I didn't know how to read a room, and I know you're all tired, but if you don't mind, I'm going to end with just a little, the last part of this poem, and then I'll give you something to enjoy the rest of the evening, the rest of the afternoon by. Thanks again to folks, everybody at PCC. Thanks for all of you here. Thanks for just your hearts and your souls and all the good that you do. Thanks for sharing your stories. We scan the farmers.
Check, 1, 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. We scan the farmer's market for the crispest apples. It's the season for apples. 3 blocks west, someone's dressed like Tinkerbell, posing with a couple from Spokane in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater. A snap, a smile, another sweet moment, another dollar made. Even here, we glean the seasons by smell. Next door loquats, road trip cherries, backyard peaches. Anjo pears, my mother's 3 bags of shiny persimmons in the patio. I have friends who insist there are no seasons in LA. Let them. Let them seize the imperatives, the correlations, the communities, the arithmetic of greater numbers. Let each equation be more compelling than the last. Let glitter bedazzle death and angels. What is passed over will be here always. Past starlings and storefronts in the color of hope. Let them prophesy all the time in the world. Fuck times delicacy. Fruit does not spoil as long as it's forbidden. A philosopher once asked if I believed in God. My friend lost 2 friends, and one of them was my friend, and so was another. And in the morning I could kiss you, not to wake you, but to linger just a little, resting a bit, where my nose still brushed your neck. And yes, I was crying because you stirred and smiled, and we were going shopping, and it was still not even May. A philosopher once asked if I believed in God. I said no, because I have experience. And so now, even though I can disbelieve all I want, but I shall always know that I would want another night next to you, breathing, dancing on byways, no matter how afraid. I am writing a speech to tell a group of earnest undergrads something hopeful and life-affirming. How does one say, trim just a bit of flesh, the glass slipper will fit, you'll get to the ball, dance with the prince. Feet blister, mouths bleed rubber and cum. The backbeat fades to cross-gendered, cross-referenced graves. Jesus Christ, she's dead, she was only 22. You shh me. Say it's 4 a.m., and you'll be awake when you are. In the come and go of neutrinos, house cats, a sweetheart's note, and a schoolyard beating, there is not enough courage in my hand. but for the courage I hold in yours. What beatifies leftover lo mein, styrofoam, chopsticks, plastic forks, 2 napkins, 3 packs of crappy soy sauce none of us are going to use? You slog home drenched and empty from the work you swear you only do for the money, though we both know otherwise. Rents increasing 4.5%. Los Angeles wants $61.42 in taxes we don't owe. What trip to Paris? We're hoping to visit the supermarket between paychecks. Leftovers for the wok, the stock pot, leftover rice, leftover bok choy. Yesterday I yearned for when I could buy a bag of salad without caring how quickly even the freshest greens spoil. Yesterday I yearned for clean dishes and a clean refrigerator. But yesterday I could tell you how someone waited a little bit longer and held the elevator for me. Or at how Walgreens, the store clerk heard me sniffle and gave me some medicine. I say, hope you feel better. Or the helpful woman at the post office who said, oh, people forget the postal rates all the time. And today, as I entered the liquor store, an actor rushed past me to buy lemon drops, then dashed to the theater next door. I bought a 2-liter of Diet Coke, 3 cans of sardines and tomato sauce, and stammered, "Kamsahamnida," to the shop owner who knew I was Japanese but smiled anyway, just to me. One can forge documents, reinvent identities, concatenate acronyms, be lost in our flags, our labels, our unfilled prescriptions, and lists of the dead. Though the cure for cancer may not cure cancer, or suicide, or a trip to the doctor, who will whisper, I'll go with you, be scared with you, trust what you say, and always be here? When 2 spirits peer into moonless native sky, when transsexuals primp for conjugal visit with surgeon and syringe, when I'm writing even as how she ended, someone always made sure her nails were absolutely perfect. Who turns off my phone? Who closes my laptop? Gets a popsicle to ease my sore throat? Who are we? What is that? I think I am. What is that? But in all I give, I am yours. I am yours. I am yours. Build with me. Walk with me. Grow old and tired and share supper with me. And with you I light a candle. And with you I reheat some noodles. Or so we hope when we are weak, we can say we know what it feels like to truly love. Today, a sparrow was perched on the banana tree, and so the hummingbirds were probably too frightened to land. And near the galaxy's core, a black hole stripped a pearl blue star into ribbons of fire, and poetry is all one has strength to hear when we don't have enough daylight to waste even a little food. Leftover goes to stir fry. Stir fry becomes soup. And soup is what a lover needs after a lifetime of saving the world. Thank you. Now, PCC is paying me some damn good money to be here. I was in Mikage's class, and it was really nice, but I didn't get too many questions. Do we all want PCC to get the most from their money? Yes. So please ask some questions for me. Let them use the hell out of me so then they feel that, money was well spent. And also, to be honest, I've done enough talking. I'd love to hear what you have to think.
How do you consider yourself as a writer? Do you think that you sort of allow others to think about their own identities, or maybe a little bit more about themselves?
Sure. I mean, when I was talking about I can't know you, you can't know me, we can't understand things, then the question is, well, what do I want people to think out of my poetry? I think of, you're familiar with the meditation concept of a mandala, the thing that you look into and discover yourself? That's what I think for me a poem is. A well-written poem should be something that I look into and see something I value, and you'll see something I hope that you value. Are they going to be the same? Probably not. That's not my job. I don't feel like I have a message I need to give with a lot of my work. What I'm after, though, is, did it deliver a message to you? That's where the craft comes in and all that stuff. Thank you for coming. Yes. I don't know.
I think I have a question right here.
Okay, I have no idea where the questions are coming from. I'm a class, the hands, yeah. Okay.
What inspired you to write this book?
The real answer? 2 dead friends.
Well, I mean, yeah, I know that, but anything else that played an impact besides that?
I think knowing that though they weren't going to be the last. And also thinking that I may be next. Because there have been some times where I've wanted to kill myself. Some very recent. But what always pulls me back is that bond we all have as people, as humans, as queers. Or when I think about my friends or whatever, I think to myself, haven't you ever been in a situation you can just feel the strength of the people around you? And so that's really helping me. And so in some ways, this is a tribute, and this is to honor that and to maybe help others find it too, because damn it, I do not want to be at your fucking funerals. Okay? Look, I love my IKEA candles. I don't want to burn them at a vigil for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first off, your poems are beautiful. I definitely shed a couple tears. But I just want to know, kind of like, when you're going through the writing process, and you have like a really powerful moment you want to write about, how do you kind of go about that? Is it something where you have to take a couple weeks to really understand how you feel, or is it something that you kind of get right away and you just slap it all down on paper? Or
I've noticed that as soon as something happens, just get it down as soon as you can. I carry a notepad with me in my bed. The notes on my phone work really, really well. Just get it down. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to be even half perfect? No. But you got to get that spark down, because then later on when you come back in and hone it, it'll be nice. Also, sometimes you ever have these conversations where, damn it, I should have said that last thing. We can do that with our poems too. So giving it time to breathe, it can even make it more brilliant. So I think it's 2 stages. The first step should be just get it down. And then the second stage, just, pimp it up.
About how much time you spend writing each poem?
Ooh, well, that was a tricky question. Very little time writing a poem, way too much time editing it. So writing the poem down, pretty simple stuff. But then to get it up and ready, I'll get it to the best I can, and then what I'll do is I'll take it to a place, well, maybe not like this is cool, this is big, but I'll go to a poetry reading or something and just play it out and see how it works, and then I'll go back and play with it and use that time. So it probably, to get a poem from a notebook to where I want to submit it, if I'm really working on that poem, no less than a month.
Thank you.
Since you're an English professor, what is your best advice for students who struggle to write?
Your process. There's something in your process. I don't think people get too much, I don't think it's a writer's block issue. I think writer's block is overrated. What we get is thinker's block. What we end up doing sometimes is we put pen to paper before we've kind of lived around the poem that we're trying to write. If we can't imagine where that poem is going to go, we're going to have a very, very difficult time writing about it. So I think that when you are having difficulty writing, I would tell my students, are you getting enough sleep? Are you having enough me time that you can think about what you're about to do? Because if you can't imagine in your head where you're going to go with a paper or a poem or a story, there's no way in hell you're going to do it having to worry about subordinate conjunctions, and topic sentences, and theses, and active voice, all that junk. Okay.
How did you discover your writing voice, and how did it correlate, or how did you discovering your identity, like, did art help you discover your identity? Or I guess I'm just interested in your writing voice and how you like came to where you're at.
Let's start a little bit with writing voice first, okay? I just came back from the AWP in Portland, and people were saying, how do you read that way? You read so naturally. Now think about that. Break that down. How do you read that way? You read so naturally. I think sometimes we think poetry is over here and we're down here, and to read poetry we've got to kind of go up there. But I think what helps the reading voice is your poetry voice, is if you realize the divinity of your thinking voice and the voice of your soul. If you do that, you live in a world of poetry, and all you have to do is speak it and it will be good. I don't see the difference between poetry and conversation. The only difference is with poetry, I'm a little bit more careful with how I arrange and edit words. But it's language, and it's language, and it's language, and it's ours. So I don't think you would ever have to like gussy up your language for poetry. You speak in music, you speak in poetry, and you need to be insistent that your voice is divine. Okay. And then the second part of your question was?
Yeah, like how long have you been writing poetry?
I don't remember not writing poetry. And I think for me, I think I'm blessed that I have poetry, and it was, because we speak every day, it could be something that I couldn't ignore. I mean, if somebody was born to play the oboe, it's not as easy to discover. You know, you have to figure it out. But for me, because I'm a writer, I was really lucky. My instrument was right here. It was more discovering that it was okay to write. I ran away from writing. I was a chem major for a while. I was doing a lot of other things. But whenever I ran into any kinds of problems, whenever there was anything going on, writing was always there. And it's almost like one of those weird romance novels where, you know, the person next door turns out to be your true love. You just realize they're always there. They're always faithful. They're never, you know, no matter what you do, they're there with, you know, they're there to pick you up at the airport or wherever the hell this is going on. And then you just realize, hey, wait a minute. Why am I trying for something when I have something better? And all I need to do is invest a little bit of time into it. And one night I said, are we going to follow this path? And I said, well, yes, I think I will. And ever since then, it's been wonderful. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, yeah. You should raise it to them. I know I'm a teacher. I'm going like this, but there's somebody else with the mic.
I guess, well, they could go first, I guess.
Yes. So we'll go for you and then.
Okay. You mentioned that you were a chem major, and then I think you're writing a kid's book about the solar system. Do you ever see yourself going back to this, like a STEM career or anything like that, or would you want to stick to being like an English professor and a writer?
I have this fantasy of being a thoracic surgeon, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think one of the beautiful things about getting older, realizing that I can't do everything that I wanted to do, is it enforces a sense of community. I'm not going to do certain things because I made some life choices, but other people will. They got it taken care of. It's good. And I just think that's a really valuable thing I picked up. I mean, it might sound really trivial, but when I realized I could trust others to share the load, that really helped me.
I enjoy writing, but it's been a few years since, I've written anything that I consider good. Any advice to, get back on track And what makes a good writing?
You might already be on track. I went through long periods of times where I didn't write anything. We just don't know. So first off, you can't know. Now, when it comes to writing, I would suggest even if you stink in your own mind, write every day. Just to kind of learn, just so you know, the last thing you want to do when you have a poem is to have a dead pen. You know, just to keep the juices flowing and everything else. But you have to understand, I'm not going to, can you hear my voice getting a little hoarse right now? I'm not going to be talking for the next day, 2 days, because I have a time to talk and I have time to shut up. And when you read, you're going to have a time, there's a time that you write poetry, and then there's a time where you're listening and what you're going to do. You know, a lot of poets say, I don't read. You know, I write poetry, I don't read too much poetry. It's more common than you think. But even for these poets, they're reading their world around them. So not writing, I would say take the guilt off and just enjoy what you're doing right now. What's going to cripple you is not the poem that you don't write, but all the guilt you put yourself through because of it. That's the enemy.
Man, that's exactly what it is. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck with it.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question. Did writing help you kind of address grief and kind of like because kind of I've dealt with grief and have felt that it's hard to kind of love yourself while grieving because they're so...
Okay, be really careful with this one, okay?
Yeah.
The answer is yes, but be really, really careful because a lot of people will misunderstand writers, say, well, if you're hurt, you should write about it. Once they do that, it's like mom telling you to clean your room when you're about to clean your room. You just don't want to do it anymore. So when you're processing grief, you have to be very careful, very private about it. If you want to publish it, you better make sure it's your decision. Don't do it for anybody else. That's your grief. See, grief is this weird thing because when you're doing grief, it's a very, very personal thing. But when other people feel grief, you want to feel empathy for them and you share the grief. You share in grieving, right? But your poetry is inherently yours. So there's a bit of a paradox. My feeling is write your poetry in the dead of night when the moon is new, got the one light, and it's just you and your paper. And then later, when you're comfortable with it on your terms, that's when you share it. Or you don't. It's up to you. Okay?
Thank you.
Do you think having a big ego hurts or helps a writer? Not saying you have an ego.
Where are we? I can't see. I mean,
Writing.
Okay, your ego was so small, you disappeared.
Thank you.
I have a fucking big ego. I think you should too. I think anytime you cut a tree and you put words on it, on its dead body, you better have an ego. But there's a difference between having a big ego and being an ass about it. So have a big ego. Think highly of yourself. But do what Walt Whitman said, what I assume, you shall assume. You have a big ego because you're a human being, and being a human being is a fucking great thing to be. And you're surrounded by other human beings, and they should have big egos too. So absolutely you should have a big ego. I want you to have an ego bigger than the sky. But I want one too, and I want her to have one, I want him to have one, I want them to have one too.
Thank you.
How significant was going to graduate school for you as a writer?
Anybody here from Cornell? Okay. First off, grad schools are like puppies. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. So one grad school experience is not going to be like the others. So I'm going to tell you for me personally. For me personally, it wasn't everything I expected. There were some things that I didn't understand, and it's really classic that you'll go as, like if you go in as an MFA writer, people will misunderstand your work. They just will. So what being in grad school is two things. One, even if they misunderstand your work, you have to be creative. Creative writer, you have to be creative in what you can gain from the people around you. So somebody is this ass from Boston. They've got a really good sense of line. Let's take that. So someone is that. So you just really, pick and steal and work that way. The other thing that you can really, really learn in graduate school is you learn how readers take in your work. So when it becomes time to read and you're reading to different audiences, you kind of get a feeling how they're going to react. And that's valuable. And because it's such a high-pressure situation and everybody around you is good, you're going to be learning super fast. So graduate school, you have to kind of get meta about it. You can't really let them see your soul. You have to go in there and figure out you're there to get something. What's for sale? How am I going to get it? And how do I get the best experience out of it? I really enjoyed Cornell. I found out that with distance, I love Cornell more and more. When I was there, did I love Cornell? Maybe not, but I learned a lot and I was grateful. Now, I don't learn so much from Cornell, but I really love that I was there.
Yep. So, as a judo black belt, and how do you feel about professional athletes that are trans? And do you think they have more of an advantage? Say, like in the Olympics in wrestling, they have a trans person.
Where are you? Can you raise your hand for a second?
Right here in the middle.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
Tough question. I think that, here's a situation where you have to be a poet about things. Everyone's got a different set of, everyone's different. Everyone's got a different set of capabilities and capacities. You can't put a dollar value. When I was growing up, I trained with men. You can't put a dollar value on that, and that has nothing to do with hormones or genetics or strength. It has to do with I got used to a very powerful level of competition. I know that in a lot of dojos, women get split off. People who present female get split off, and they work because judo dojos can be kind of sexist. They won't get the same level of training nor the same level of attention. So at the end of the day, it might not be fair on some level for me to compete with people who didn't have my training experience. I can do that. I can say all of that and not even talk about physiology. You throw physiology in, it's really a trip. All I can say right now is there's not enough data. We don't know. And people will say one thing or another. I know, for example, for a long time in judo, I didn't practice judo because I knew the moment I stepped on the dojo, the moment I grabbed somebody and I pulled them and they flew 5 feet, I would de facto out myself, even though I modeled my judo after some of the best female judoka in the country. So, I've had people say, I really thought you were pretty, then I saw you move, and I immediately knew you were really a man. Yeah, San Francisco, real forward-thinking city, that. So, my feelings on it is, I feel it's really, really complicated, and I know I'm not giving you a satisfactory answer. But I'm going to tell you it's not easy. There are some people out there where it's like, you have a body and you have the training and you have all of this stuff that you got that body because you were trained in a certain way that most women, most people who present female were denied. You were driven. When somebody else would have told you, why don't you take it easy? You got somebody yelling at you saying, dog nuts, get up. And so what that's eventually going to do is that's going to hone your body in a certain way. I got trained really, really rough. And because of that, I got pretty good. But some of that was cruel. Some of that was manhood run out of control. So it's not simply genetics, it's also the culture. You know, one of the questions is, if you have two people of equal ability and you train one hard and you train one in a different way, what's going to happen? So that's that. It's a rough question. I have some of my good friends are competing as martial artists and everything, you know, things back and forth. I do the Transgender Martial Arts Alliance. In good conscience, I can't say there's no difference. I just don't know where the differences are.
Thank you. We have time for just one more question, and then Rika's going to talk. She can talk over here and sign books from 1:30 to 2. So if you're interested in that, you can line up on the left side after this last question. Rika, thank you so much. We want to just take one moment to ask you to complete this survey. So if you're, you know, before you leave, take a quick clip of it. And our last question goes to you, sir.
Hi, my name is Osvaldo. I'm way here in the back.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I just wanted to bring up a couple of words that kind of resonated with me, and it seems like a common variable for all of us is value and time, and repetition of some words such as "you don't need to understand." And my question is, if time is all we have as a form of currency, and it takes time to understand or be understood, how does repeating the words "you don't need to understand" reinforce the time it takes or took you to understand your friends in terms of how long it invested in that time with your friends?
You have to remember that words don't simply have lexical space. They also have rhythmical components. And sometimes for the sake of the melody and for the sake of the song and the beat and the meter, repetition works as well. From the very beginnings of poetry, when we invoke things, we repeat things. That's not because we didn't hear things the first time or we have time to waste or whatever. It's because many times when we're speaking poetry, we're also singing music. And so it works that way as well. And sometimes we will throw something out, we'll repeat a line in poetry as a refrain, or in a speech the way I just did because I come from poetry, to show I want you to think a little bit less about what I'm saying. I want you to think less about the dictionary definitions of what I'm saying and more about the music in what I'm saying. So when I'm doing that, you notice when I'm singing this and I'm going, you have to understand, you have to understand, you have to understand, I'm moving my voice back and forth, and I'm trying to give you a tactile experience that works with that. And so there's a method there. And so sometimes, you know, you take more time to save time. Sometimes the simplest explanation or the fastest explanation is not necessarily the shortest one. It's the one I think that takes the soul a little bit longer. I mean, takes more deeply. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And then I also wanted to thank you, and I appreciate and value your experiences to bestow that information onto all of us today.
Y'all have been a great audience. You're the ones who brought it all out for me. I appreciate it. Okay. Sorry, I made a mess of this place. Yes, please. Oh, by the way, if you want to buy a book or if you just want to say hi, I'm here. We're taking some. Yes, just come on up, say hello, whatever. Yeah.
Can we give one more round of applause to Rika, please? Thank you. As she mentioned, she has some books here for sale, and she does take credit card. I want to remind you to please, if you can,